Hi and welcome to this fourth video in the series of building cost-effective integrations with Apex, ORDS and the Oracle database. Today we're going to be talking about sending data to other systems. So we'll look at two methods. One is sending data to a REST API using the Apex Web Service PL/SQL API or REST data sources. The other is to allow third parties to come and fetch data via ORDS REST APIs that we host. So let's start by looking at some examples. So in this first use case, we're sending customer information to QuickBooks. So we have an Apex application that maintains prospects. And once that prospect starts buying product from us, we want to create them as a customer in QuickBooks so that we can invoice them. So we use Apex to call the Apex Web Service API and pass the prospect information along and create a customer in QuickBooks. That returns back to us a QuickBooks customer ID, which we can then use to maintain a link between the prospect and that customer in QuickBooks. And we'll look at a demo of this in a little while. This example is a little bit more involved. So in this example, we're allowing users to maintain and manage journal entries in an Apex application. They can upload Excel spreadsheets and create copies of journals in this Apex application. And then once they're ready to submit it for approval, it goes through Apex workflow to manage that approval process. Once it's approved, we're going to call the ERP Integrations REST API. And that's a Fusion web service that handles a bunch of stuff for us. So we send a base64 encoded zip file to that REST API, and we also send it a URL for a callback. And we talked about callbacks in a previous episode of this series. So Fusion takes that base64 encoded zipped file and uploads it to a product called UCM, which is like a content management system. It then loads that file into the GL interface tables, runs the journal import, and then once the journal import is complete, processes the callback. So essentially calls that REST service we provided it, which is an ORDS REST API on our side. We then go back to Fusion and call that BI Publisher report in step 10 to get any errored records that failed in the journal import process. So you can see that whole process of sending data to Fusion is orchestrated by the Apex workflow. And we're using Apex Web Service to send that data to Fusion. In this example, we are maintaining invoice receipts in e-business suite, and we need to send those receipts to Oracle Account Reconciliation Cloud Service, where they're going to be matched with some other files. So the first thing we need to do is call a file store API in Oracle ARCs. So we're going to send the CSV files generated of those AR receipts to the file store in ARCs. Then we call another web service to start the import. So we call the start import web service in ARCs and provide the file that we want it to import. And finally, we run the auto match process in ARCs, which is like a background job. And we give it the name of the import, and it then performs the matching process. So this orchestration is all handled in a PL/SQL package, which calls each of those web services one after the other. And then if one of them fails, it rolls back or lets the user know what the issue is. So again, quite a complex integration where we're sending data to another system. So in this example, we're allowing a third party to initiate a request for data. So if we start on the right-hand side, we have a customer system that initiates a request for on-hand inventory data. So this is where we have supplier managed inventory in Oracle e-business suite. So the first thing the customer system needs to do is call the auth credentials endpoint in ORDS. They pass the client ID and client secret and get back a token. They can then use that token to call the REST API we've provided to return just the on-hand inventory for that vendor, that customer's inventory. That web service then returns the on-hand quantities to the customer system. So instead of us having to send data to that customer system, we allow the customer to come and get that data. Alright, so let's look at a demo of this. So we're going to create customers in QuickBooks from our Apex application. So I have this Apex app, Apex to QuickBooks, and this is holding up our prospects. So you can see a number of these prospects have already been turned into customers. We're going to take this demo prospect and send that to QuickBooks. So in my case, I have a sandbox QuickBooks instance. So let's have a look at the customers that we already have in there. And we make sure we don't already have a customer called demo. So we don't. So let me open this prospect, and we're going to send this prospect to QuickBooks. So that's now completed. So I can cancel that operation. If we refresh the page, we can see we've got customer ID 72. So now if we go into QuickBooks and look for a demo. So there's our demo prospect with all the information that we had in our prospect. So how do we do that? So we have this page called prospect. So this is the page that we looked at here, where we sort of had the prospect information. And in that page, we had a button to send to QuickBooks. Behind that button, we have this PL SQL API. So let's have a quick look at that. And look for that PL SQL procedure. So all this procedure does, it grabs the prospect ID of the record that that user was on, and then collects all the information related to that prospect. And then it calls a PL SQL function to return a clob of the JSON related to that prospect. So we're just adding these different attributes of the prospect to this JSON object. Then we call another API to send that customer information to QuickBooks. So you can see here we're passing in the JSON. And then we're calling Apex Web Service.setRequestHeaders to tell QuickBooks that we're sending JSON and we want a JSON response. Then we call the QuickBooks API in the sandbox environment with the post method. So we're calling Apex Web Service make REST request. We're using this credential static ID to call QuickBooks access token. So this is a Apex web credential that has the token that authenticates us to QuickBooks. And then we check the response. So if we get a 200 back, we know that customer got created successfully. And we're returning the response returned from QuickBooks here also. And then we're passing that response to get out the new customer ID and the display name of that customer ID. And then we're updating that customer ID in our prospects table and changing the status to show that it's now in QuickBooks. So you can see that was pretty straightforward. Okay, so that's it for this video on building cost-effective integrations with Apex ORDS and the Oracle database, and this was sending data to other systems. Thank you for listening.